Now, we will once again go back, especially the purpose of this, especially the farm practices, the common farm practices in which the we are dealing about the physical form of the heat, especially to have the disinfection of a farm, and it can be done at 300 degrees Celsius. And apart from this one, the moist heat or the steam can also be used. And the radiation is another source of disinfection. The bactericidal effect of solar radiation is due to the presence of ultraviolet rays in sunlight, which is a very good disinfection. And pathogens like brucella are killed at 4 to 5 hours with direct sunlight, including the a few of the viral diseases also. The artificial UV lamps can also be used for disinfection. Then filtration is another method. The technique has been used to control microbial population in air, water and biological materials. And desiccation, and this process removes the moisture from microorganisms, the drying effect varying with type of microorganisms. So the second one is the chemical disinfection. It is widely used in veterinary practice because of their aqueous solutions, easy to prepare, and they are cheap and have a broad spectrum of activity. And this is a very good source of the disinfection method, but uh, stains or damage of the materials is not usually happens in this method, and it is free of undesirable odor except the few of the chemicals like the phenyl, etc. Then most commonly used disinfectant fall into one of the major categories like acids or alkalis. So usually the boric acid at the rate of 4 to 6%, or another solution sodium hydroxide 1, 2 or 5% solution is available as lye for disinfection of animal houses. So these names need to be remembered. And calcium hydroxide, lime water or and slacked lime is also another source. And among the aldehydes, formaldehyde usually 5 to 10%. So the formaldehyde is available as 40%, and we need to make it as the formalin, which is 10% based and can be used for washing the floor or animal houses. Then some of the aldehydes like glutaraldehyde, aqueous solution is useful for sterilization of the instruments. And detergents and soaps are also used, and these are used mainly for washing, especially the grease, dirt and other organic matter, which tend to reduce the efficacy of disinfectants. Example is the quaternary ammonium compounds like Savlan, Cetavlan, or the chlorhexidine solutions are also used. Then halogens, and these are important groups of the disinfectants. They are found everywhere in veterinary practice. So, a process of oxidation following the exposure to either chlorine or iodine, which brings about the destruction of most of the pathogens. Whereas the gaseous chlorine, then HCl or hydrochloric acid, then sometimes the organic chloramines are commonly used. So the chlorines very commonly used for the disinfections of the water. Then apart from this one, bleaching powder, that's also called as calcium hypochlorite, are commonly used for as one of the disinfectant, especially in the area where lot of smell of the ammonia etc. are there. Then the metallic compounds like copper sulfate 5 milligram per liter can also be used. Then some of the oxidizing agents like potassium permanganate, which is 1 to 2 milligram per liter, that can also be used. Whereas the phenols, this includes a variety of the chemicals. The number one is the cresol, lysol, thymol, and sometimes the tar acids, and also the hexachlorophene. And phenol 0.5 to 5% can be used for farm buildings especially. Then bleaching powder, the chlorinated lime can also be used as one of the good disinfectant agent. And how much quantity has to be put is 1 kg of bleaching powder can be used with 25 liters of water, which makes a very good deodorant. Then the sodium hypochlorite, you might have heard the name during the COVID-19. This chemical was very commonly used. So this is a very similar to that of the bleaching powder, but it is a powerful germicide in the absence of organic matter. So these are all the some of the agents. And quick lime, even calcium oxide or fresh lime is a good disinfectant, and it is used in the burial of the pits, then dispose the carcass, and for land application also. Whereas the calcium hydroxide is also called as the slacked lime. This is very commonly used in whitewashing of the walls, and it acts as the disinfectant also. While whitewashing, 5% of phenol can also be added with the whitewash for better effects. Whereas the gaseous disinfectants like formalin gas, ozone gas, and cresol gas can be used very commonly. Then the another term everyone knows now very familiarly after the COVID-19 outbreak or the pandemic. Earlier this term was not at all heard by the common people. Now everybody is understanding the word quarantine. So what is a quarantine? Is the process of segregating apparently healthy animals, especially animals being introduced into the herd or into the country for the first time, which have been exposed to the risk of the infection. And everyone can understand that. Suppose a person who was arriving to an airport from a country where the COVID-19 was there, then he or she used to be quarantined. Hence the people know this term very very well. Then quarantine period depends upon the incubation period of that particular disease. So in the practice, minimum period of 30 to 40 days has been generally accepted as reasonable period, but in case of diseases like rabies, this period is up to 6 months quarantine is required. So a separate quarantine house is always required if the cattle are concerned. The animal should be screened for internal parasites by fecal examination, and deworming should be carried out on 23rd or 24th if it is required, and they should be dipped or sprayed on 25th or 25th day of the arrival to remove the ectoparasites once in usually 25 or 25th day. This is also the needed action because many times the ticks, lice, mites, then many other biting insects can also be the storehouse of some of the diseases. Then third term is isolation. Isolation is the process of segregation of the diseased or infected animals from that of the apparently healthy ones in the event of outbreak of a contagious diseases. So such segregated animals should preferably be housed in a separate isolation shed situated far away from normal animal house. So if a separate shed is not available, the animals for isolation should be tied at one end of the shed as far as away from the apparently healthy livestock is concerned. So this practice should be preferably done once the process of quarantine is there or over. Then attendants and equipments for sick animals should be separate. Attendant should be there, and an attendant who is attending the deceased animal should not touch or come in contact with that of the another animal which is affected with a contagious disease. And all the utensils which are used for the treatment of the animal, for feeding, then for all other purposes should not be used for other animals which are apparently healthy. So sometimes, but this may not be practically not possible. The sick animals should be attended only after the healthy stock. Then what should do is, suppose uh, the labor problem is there, then after attending all the healthy animals, the person attendant should attend lastly the deceased animal. So the equipment should be thoroughly disinfected, washed properly in water. Then the attendant should wash the hands, feet and gumboots in an antiseptic lotion and change his clothes also. So the isolated animals are brought back to the healthy herd only after they are fully recovered, and the chance of passing on the infection should be totally removed and it should be zero. Suppose it's a contagious diseases like BQ, HS, etc. They should be totally segregated, and if they become apparently normal, then only they need to be brought back to the healthy animal child, or else they become the source of the infection to the remaining animals. Hence, after complete recovery only, they should be brought, or else it should be prevented as much as possible. And disposal and utilization of carcass, this is also another problem in farm animal management. The primary purpose of the safe disposal of the carcass is to ensure and check and spread disease either to the susceptible animals or to the humans. And carcasses of animal may be disposed by sending them to the knackeries or by burial or burning. So they should be burned. Sometimes it is impossible to burn a carcass which is weighing about 350 to 400 kg. Then burial is the better process always. And sometimes if the postmortem is conducted, then the burial should be accompanied with chemical inspections of that particular space. Then burial of the carcass is should be always a proper site should be selected. Then the burial place must be distant from a well or water course, and there be a sufficiently subsoil to allow depth of 6 feet above the carcass. The carcass must be buried in its skin to be covered with a sufficient quantity of quicklime or other disinfectants. The dead animals should be arranged upon its back with feet upwards. So, how a carcass should be disposed is, so the back of the animal should be down, then the feet should be upwards, so that the head should be down. Then the skin is lashed inside the pit, all cases except in case of the anthrax. In anthrax, there should not be any post-mortem to be conducted. If anybody wants to have the diagnosis, the blood oozing out of the orifice need to be taken, especially on a slide, then stained immediately and seen. So the smell of the carcass may attract the wild beasts like foxes, dogs. The area of the burial needs to be disinfected with coal tar, which always act as a detergent for the sufficient length of the time. So the coal tar is one of the best material to burn the carcass, and put the coal tar on the carcass, then put the fire and need to be disinfected sometimes. Then incineration, or this is also called as the cremation of the carcasses, burning. And sometimes this is also another place where in which the carcass is cremated properly from a pit. Then there are four methods of cremation. Number one, the pit method. Second one is the surface burning method. Third one is the flame gum method, and incineration in a destructor. So there are varieties of the cremation methods are there, just like the human beings also. The same type of the methods are there. Then the pit method. Let us go one by one. The how the carcasses are being cremated or incinerated or burned during the process. So the pit method, for a carcass of a large cow, for example, a weighing about 300, 250 kg to 300, dig a pit measuring about 7 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 18-inch deep is dug. So sufficient this depth should be there, so that the part of the carcass should not be come out and should not attract the predators like the dogs and foxes. So for this, a trench about 9 inches wide and 9 inches deep is next dug right across the bottom of the pit, and the ends of this carcass trench being the bottom of the pit and sloped upward so as to reach the ground level to the extent of 2.5 feet from the edge of the pit. So above the pit, sufficient length should be there, 4 feet wide should be there, 7 feet long, and 18-inch deep. So if it is more deep also, there is no problem for it, and it's always a good practice. The object of this trench is to provide the draught and to facilitate lighting of the fire. So the fire may be laid in the following sequence: fill the trench with straw, soaked with paraffin to provide lighting points, because inflammable material should be used. Then place a few pieces of heavy timbers, then iron rails at intervals across the ventilation trench so that to prevent its obstruction. Then later, the cover the bottom of the pit with a very thin pieces of the wood. Add large pieces of the wood, because the wood always support the burning, just like the human burning, etc. It is also one of the important process of burning the animals. And later, pour sufficient quantity of the liquid paraffin to the wood, then add coal sufficient quantity so that the fire is started by lighting the straw at once or both ends of lightning point. So this point, whenever the carcass is put in a pit, then it should be fired by putting lot of wood pieces over and pouring the paraffin. So sometimes the coal should be added for additional burning effect. Then both ends of the straws which are adhered to the carcass should be caught fire with lighting points. Then surface burning method. So this method is one of the easily adopted method when labor is scarce. We do not have the labor to have the trench and also dig the pit, or there are no machines like JCB, etc. for the easy disposal of the carcass. But when mature, this nature of the ground is not suitable for construction of the pit, that is when the land is waterlogged or it is having lot of stones, etc., then it is impossible to dig the pit. So at that time we can use the burning method. How to do this? Two parallel trenches about 5 feet long, 9-inch wide and 9-inch deep. 5 feet long, 9 inches wide and 9 inches deep and 2 feet apart are dug in the direction of prevailing wind. So whenever there is a wind is there, then the firing may be in the direction of the wind. Hence, we should dig the pit in such a way that it should be in the direction of prevailing wind. And later, the trench should be there, a minimum length of 5 feet long, especially then 5-inch wide, 9-inch wide and 9-inch deep, or 2 feet apart. So 5 feet and 2 feet is sufficient for inserting. The carcass is placed over the trenches. Then coal is placed on around the carcass so that a heap is formed. Then wood is soaked in paraffin entirely. A small quantity of paraffin saturated straw is added and the fire is then lit. So this is the method of incineration. Then apart from this one, there is one method called as the flame gun method. So no pit or trench is required to this method. The carcass is placed on ground or corrugated iron sheet and a powerful flame. Here this is directed towards it, and sometimes it is always used to destroy the carcasses. So the time taken depends upon the number of flame guns used and the size of the animal. But this is usually restricted for the smaller animal. The huge or large animals cannot be flamed with a single gun, or multiple guns has to be used, especially the power guns. Then incineration is another process. Incineration is a waste treatment process that involves the combustion of substances which are wasted, especially in case of the carcasses. So it will cause it is going to cause the treatment of the waste, especially in niche areas where the clinical waste and certain biohazardous waste are put, like the pathogens, and toxin can be destroyed by very high temperature. That's called as the incineration. So many times it is not like the burning, so very high temperature is used. For example, in huge fire, especially waste disposal places, then there will be very big burners are there. Then the waste material is put on the top of this particular funnel and it is passed inside the incinerator. So it's called as the super healer here in the below thing. Then another called as the heating coils will be present. Then there will be a circulation of the sand, and the castable refractory should be there to sustain the very high temperature, maybe more than 1000 degree Celsius. Then waste material is put just like the spray. Then everything will be burned and formed into the ashes. So this is one of the best method, but it is very high electricity consuming. At the same time, the cost effectiveness is very high. So the sand is used in a turning pattern so that the admission of this particular thing is always, it is very much required. Then the another process of so here this is a process wherein with the common farm management system wherein which we are but castration is making the animal unable to reproduce. It's generally known as the castration. Is one of the some of the terms are there. And India, other Southeast Asian countries like Asian countries, bullocks are extensively used for agriculture operation. Hence, this is a simple process of treatment of the animals with making them sterile. And buffalo is particularly valued as draught animal in rice growing areas, and male cattle and buffaloes meant for the draught purpose are always castrated. Then the purpose of this castration is to render the animal very docile, because whenever there is a very high concentration of the testosterone, the animals will be very ferocious. So to induce faster gain in the body weight and to improve the quality of the meat and to control indiscriminate breeding is also another process of this purpose is concerned. So apart from this one, the to control indiscriminate breeding, then to prevent genital diseases of many of the animals. And castration also help in a lean and slender neck, which facilitates the correct fitness of yoke, especially in case of the work bullocks or the work cattle. For the plowing etc., the animals become little docile because there is no effect of the testosterone, but the animals are very sturdy at the same time. Hence, this method should be used to castrate the bulls. Castration should be performed during the cold seasons and strictly avoid rainy season for fear of fly problem, and castrated animals should be rested for few days in clean and the comfortable pens. Then what is the age of a animal, especially the young animals? Within 3 months it is the surgical method or illustrator should be used. Adult animal within 1 year of the age, and it is also called as closed method or Birdizo castrators. Everyone knows the closed method is also caused by the Birdizo castrator. Then apart from this one, Birdizo castrator, open surgical method is also used, and rubber ring or elastrator method is also used. Then Birdizo method is also known as the bloodless castration method. Then the Birdizo castrator is used to crush the spermatic cord and thus stopping the blood to the testes. So this results in atrophy of the testis and stoppage of spermatozoa production. And after casting, secure the animal very properly. Then move the spermatic cord to the side of the scrotum and then clamp the Birdizo at 3 to 5 centimeter above the testicles and it is hold for few seconds. Then repeat the operation on the same cord at the location about 1 centimeter below the first line. Means 2 times you have to put the vertigo castrator, and this method is safe, quick and less chance of getting infection. Of course, less painful also to the animals, as the large animals do have some less sense of the pain. So ethically also it is accepted method. Then open or surgical method, the scrotum is opened, the testicles are removed aseptically, and the wound is treated with antiseptics, and whenever required it is sutured with the absorbable catgut. In young bulls, the cord may be cut as savagely off, but in case of mature bulls, the cord should be twisted before severing it, and sometimes the knot should also be put, or the ligature, especially to the blood vessels, etc. And it need to be conducted under the special anesthetic, local anesthesia, and also with the tranquilizers. And rubber ring or castrator elastrator method, a strong and tight rubber ring is placed around the cord, then at early age of the calf itself. This creates constant pressure on the testicles, then these are atrophied and absorbed, and ring drops down especially. But the elastrator rings are very painful to the animal, so it is not usually recommended as per the animal welfare standards. So nowadays that type of the castration is not recommended. Of course, all the type of these techniques should be used below 3 months age. Then another method is called as the dehorning. Dehorning means removal of well-grown hairs. So disbudding means arresting the horn growth at early age when the horn root is in the bud stage. Then horn serves no useful purpose. Horn serves no useful purpose also. Then, so dehorned animals will need to have less space in the sheds. Then cattle with horns inflict bruises on each other that may result in heavy economic losses. Hence, the horned animals are very dangerous who the operator is concerned. Hence, they should be dehorned. And many times the dehorning process is handled more easily, dehorned animals. But this prevents the occurrence of the horn cancer in some breeds which are susceptible to the horn cancer. But optimum age of the dehorning is 15 to 20 days, and the methods of dehorning are hot iron method, then illustration, then chemical method, and dehorning saw or the clippers. Then hot and iron method is another method. Especially designed electric dehorner is used for this purpose. This is a bloodless method. It may be used at any season. The rod heated with electricity may be used especially for so this rod should be used with electricity, automatically control the maintain the temperature above 10,000 degree Fahrenheit. Applying it to the horn bud for 10 seconds is sufficient to destroy the horn tissue. So illustrator is a method especially made in thick rubber ring applied on the base of the horn, and the rubber band shuts off circulation and the horn gradually comes off, and small buds drop in 3 to 6 weeks, and large horns take even 2 months. This is a very painful method and not recommended now, and uh, such type of the illustrators should not be used. Chemical method, the caustic potash or caustic soda is a common chemical used for dehardening, and these are available in the form of the paste or the solution. So that can be applied below just the buds of the horns. So, whereas there should be a little caution has to be applied, clip the hair around the horn buds and surrounding the area, and a ring vaseline to protect the eyes, especially vaseline against the chemical. Rub the chemicals over the buds till bleeding occurs. So that's the process, and of course this is also the painful procedure. Whereas the older cattle are to be dehorned, a specially designed clippers or saw are used, and a considerable amount of bleeding may follow. Always it is follows the dehorning process. So to prevent the bleeding, the main horn artery should be tied off with a cotton or the silk thread. So this may done by sliding a sewing needle under the artery to pull the thread in the place before tying, or to tie the artery which supplies to the horn, and it is necessary when sawing or clipping the horn to take about half an inch of the skin in order to get at the horn roots. It is very difficult to get the opposition of the skins of the horns always, because sometimes the wound may not heal at all. Then extra teeth removal, or sometimes there is vestigial teeth are also there, and at that time they need the trimming, and this extra teeth need to be removed always. Sometimes animals with one or even two extra teeth are also seen. They are called as the vestigial teeth, and such extra teeth may be blind or leaky sometimes, and sometimes why we are going to remove this thing is they may cause the infection sometimes, because the bacteria may enter inside that cavity and form the pus pouch. Hence, such extra teeth should be removed, and they should be removed before the calf attains 6 months of the age. Later, they cannot be removed. After controlling the calf, maybe under the sedation or having tranquilization with the agents, tranquilizing agents, it is thoroughly cleaned and disinfected with tincture iodine, and mark extra teeth before removal. So one should be take care that the normal teeth are always looks like the rudimentary teeth should never be removed, and deep teeth are clipped off with scissors, sometimes the blunt scissors, and before removing, a lignocane about 5 to 10 ml has to be administered below the teeth before extirpation, and some more tincture is applied after finishing the process, and the older heifer suture is put in order to arrest bleeding. And automutilation is another problem. The animal may lick its own wound and make it very wide, so that it can never heal. So such restraint should always be put, so that the animals should not lick their own wound, and this will always delay the process of wound healing. And apart from this one, whenever there is a horn cancer, etc., then they should be properly treated in such a way that they should be very cautiously need to be removed. And with this, we are going to stop today's class, and we will come up with the other classes tomorrow. Tomorrow there is a class, and I request everyone to attend.